Last time on A Soldier's Life. With Relia's help, they make it through more dungeon rooms. They get rewarded with more dungeon artifacts, and Eric shows Relia some of his old ones and asks if she knows what they do. She has some knowledge and says that the rings have to be burned, and only then can the small runes inside be read. Eric makes use of his dreamscape and enlarges the rings so he can read the script. And I thought that was pretty cool. They kill gnolls, bears, and boars for food and potions. They start to trust Relia a bit more, but she immediately sort of breaks that trust and gets yelled at by both Eric and Mavieth. They finish the floor and get to a new safe room with a staircase to the next level. Eric goes up to scout, finds a wyvern, if it was a dragon. I think it was a wyvern. It's always a fucking wyvern, not a dragon. And what looks like a legionnaire. And who isn't? Is it the Goblin in Disguise? I doubt it, but it would be funny. Who fucking isn't? We will now find out. Chapter 166. Good news, bad news. Oh no. Is it good news like, oh my god, it's a Legionnaire friend? Bad news, everyone is dead. The steel helmet with its scratched red lacquer came off, and I recognized him immediately. Even with a scraggly beard, the familiar lines of Calm's disappointing Calm's face were easy to make out across the chamber. The company armorer was alive. Eric, is that you? He yelled across the chamber, clearly skeptical and not believing what he was seeing. I remembered he was with Flavius, Linus, and Dante. A relieved smile spread across my face. It is me. Are you alone? I yelled back. The earth drake that had been agitated was now going into frenzy as we yelled back and forth, making conversation difficult. It was not permitted to leave the room, and two tasty meals encased in red armor were talking back and forth, just out of its reach. Flavius, Linus, Dante, Brutus, and Fabian are at the other end of the passage. They're fishing in the last room. Holy shit! So many people are alive! He yelled back. I relaxed somewhat. 5 men of the company were alive, and so was the scholar. That means that Brutus and fucking Fabian probably found their way to their group pretty fast. Admittedly, I could have done without one of them being Flavius. You know what? Real. Mavieth and I are fine as well. I'm glad Brutus found you, I replied. My thoughts turned to the forthcoming reunion and what it would mean. No longer being able to use my ability or the collector in storing Relia. He laughed. We found him. He wouldn't leave his entry room to fight the spiders. He was with the scholar and starving. We were surprised he had not eaten the scholar. I could not even contemplate such an action, but when men got desperate, they would do anything to survive. How are you in food? I yelled across. Not great, but we have enough to go around if we can reunite. Reunite. We managed to clear a few rooms, but only this last one had a decent source of food with the fish. He turned and looked back down the hallway. I have to get back, Eric. They are fishing in the previous room, but the pair of harpies will return soon. Our safe room is just beyond the harpy room, the left hallway coming from this direction. I'm sure Flavius can come up with a plan to take care of this. He indicated toward the powerful earth drake. Just hold on a bit. I will go get someone, he reassured. Then he was gone, disappearing as if he were a figment of my imagination. Quickly, fucking Eric, kill the dragon. I watched a large pseudo-dragon storm around the chamber for over an hour. It looked powerful and well-muscled, with thick scales that moved like small shields along its body. Its head appeared bony, and its jaws sported dozens of 6-inch fangs. It calmed down a few moments after Colm left and focused all its attention on me. Just over an hour later, Flavius and Brutus arrived with Colm. They talked among themselves before Flavius yelled across. Eric, we cannot defeat this drake. Colm was watching it, looking for a weakness, but attacking would be a death sentence. Have you seen anyone else? I tempered my reply. Mavieth is still with me. We appeared on the lower floor of the dungeon. I pointed behind me. There are stairs here, leading down. Brutus yelled. What happened when you entered? His tone held some anger, likely for being left to fend for himself with just a scholar. Alright, Brutus. Why the fuck did you leave us? I explained what had happened. Mavis got struck multiple times by Spectre and lost contact with the scholar. He was in bad shape when we entered, and we have had a rough time of it on the lower levels. I said this more to mollify the clearly angered Brutus. No sign of Castile, I added to brush past his antipathy. There was a brief conversation I could not hear before Flavius yelled back across the chamber, stirring the earthquake. Brutus and the scholar exited the dungeon to re-enter 3 days after everyone else entered. Wait, what? Damn. Brutus added, yelling over the Drake's movements. I was hoping to appear in a different entry room with another group. The bodies of Remus and Soren were just outside the dungeon entrance, torn apart. Oh. Wait, so there's another 2-people group. The snow was packed around the entrance, and there were half a dozen specters as well. The news of the death of our company mates was hard to swallow. What about Cyrus? Only one group of 3 had entered the dungeon. Right, they were 3. Cyrus, Soren, and Remus. Brutus impatiently replied. I didn't have time to check all the body parts, but I did not see him. He could be wyvern shit by now for all I know. Wow, dude. Be a little bit nice. Holy shit. Flavius took over the conversation. We think the summoner is in the dungeon with us. What? Why would he enter the dungeon? I was confused by the stupidity of it. Why trap himself in here? Was his lust for vengeance really that great? I think so. Flavius answered. The wyverns were gone, but they killed Soren and Remus. Brutus added. After the specters chased us back into the dungeon, the scholar said he saw bloody footprints in the snow, heading into the dungeon. They were narrow, like an elf's, and definitely not legion boots. There was a prolonged period of silence as they let me absorb the implications. We were fighting for our lives in every room and being hunted by a mage seeking revenge. Well, I kinda humored that last time by him sending in the wyvern. But, yeah, okay. Flavius broke the silence. Eric, we have to head back past the Harpy room to reach our safe room. Linus has a broken leg and Dante is recovering from spider poison. Even if they were healthy, I don't think we could defeat this creature. The Earth Drake hissed at Flavius in apparent challenge at his gestures. Combe was the last to leave and tried to encourage me. If we can find Castile, she can defeat this Drake. Stay alive until then. I gave him some parting knowledge. All the bears have had healing potions in their reward chest, Colm. He nodded curtly in thanks, and I heard Flavius yell at Colm to hurry. The Earth Drake focused solidly on me now. It lay down on all fours, its long neck extended toward me, and its glossy black eyes waited. I waited 10 minutes and took out the collector in the meantime. I decided to talk to the creature. You know I've killed a wyvern before, and it was much bigger than you. The Drake cocked its head like a dog, and turned to the other passage to confirm no one was there before focusing on me again. I feel like if he kills it, which he can, then he's gonna have to explain that he killed it to the others, because now they've seen that there's a fucking Drake there. How is he gonna do that? Maybe it killed it. He's strong. I stepped into the room and its body tensed as its head snapped up. Then, like a marionette with its strings cut, it collapsed to the ground. The Drake had resisted, but not as strongly as the wyvern had. It still bottomed out my other, but I was now so accustomed to the feeling that I could brush off the disorientation it created. Wow. I was not going to pursue the others right now. Maybe after I moved Relia to the safety of my storage, we could reunite with them. I balanced the collector on the Drake's bony head and left it for now, while my other recovered. The reward chest was in the center of the chamber. It was the largest I had seen, the size of a narrow coffin. It also took a little more effort to shatter it. A few gold coins were mixed in with silver, but the real prize was a spear on top of the coins. A spear? The leaf tip was matte black, like it had been left in a fire too long and was covered in soot. The shaft was black wood, but after hefting the spear and studying it, I noticed the grain of the wood spiraled and was extremely dense. I went through a few forms, assessing the weapon, and I was like, a few forms? He was signing, like, I, Eric, take this, take this spear to wield. I promise to keep it safe. Assessing the weapon, and it hummed through the air faster than it should have. It was a little hefty, but a well-balanced weapon. Even though I could not see any runic script anywhere on the spear, I was fairly certain it was a dungeon artifact. I walked to the walls to study the green slime, carrying the spear with me. The slime appeared to flow across the surface, and its faint smell reminded me of rotten eggs. Blech. I guess this was the only thing the drake had to eat, and I could not blame its eagerness to eat us instead. I was about to return to use the collector when I paused at the slime wall. It appeared too smooth and was shaped like a door. Ooh. The tip of the spear cut through the slime curtain that concealed another corridor with no flowing lights in the ceiling or the floor. I flicked the slime off the tip and watched as it slowly began to cover the entrance again. Interesting. I returned to use the collector, and thick blue lines were drawn on it. The essence that formed was an apex earth essence. My body briefly shuddered, remembering the last time I consumed an apex essence with the earth affinity. Castile had explained that adding new affinities to your core was not dangerous, but it overwhelmed me since I had received a greater benefit from each essence with my convergent spell form. Before descending the stairs, I waited long enough to store the coins, spear, and earth essence in my space. I then positioned the heavy drake's head to face away from the passageway so that if the others returned, they would think the drake was sleeping. I also concealed the chest remains behind the drake's tail. Relia was sleeping when I returned, and Maviot looked up from a pot of stew he was attending. His deep voice asked quietly, "What was at the top of the stairs?" "A fat earth drake. Also, there were a few members of the company on the far side of the chamber. They didn't want to risk fighting the earth drake. Flavius, Calm, Linus, Brutus, Scholar Fabian, and Dante are alive," I informed the Goliath, and watched Relia carefully to see if she was listening. Her body did not flinch, and drool dripped down her cheek. Maviot looked over his shoulder at her too. "Any news on Castile?" Maviot asked as softly as he could. "No. Remus and Soren are dead, though." I was not going to tell Maviot about the elven summoner, with Relia possibly overhearing. Maviot nodded slowly at the news. "What do you want to do?" "They are retreating past the room with harpies to another safe room. There was another exit from the Earth Drake room. We will explore that for now," I said as I took the bowl of offered stew. Maviot had mixed the pork and bear meat together, but it needed a longer simmer to break down the tissue. The potatoes were well cooked and balanced the meal. I felt a little guilty about not reuniting with the men to share our food stores. I could not postpone it forever, though. I sat down opposite the Griffin Rider, studying her momentarily before setting up my sleeping arrangements. The amulet was in my hand, and I confirmed with eye contact that Maviot would remain awake while I slept. With the ring of sustenance almost acclimatized to my body, I was down to about 4 hours to feel fully rested. The entrance to the Dreamscape dungeon felt familiar. It weirdly almost felt like home now. Seeing Constantine almost made me miss the guy until he asked to spar. I materialized a replica of my new spear, and his eyebrow arched. "Another new weapon! We're going to have to train you twice as long and hard to master both the black blade and this black spear," Constantine said eagerly. I rolled my eyes and decided I would practice for a time with Xavier, the swordmaster. Of course, I did not know how Xavier would fight someone with a spear or with a spear and shield. The practice was inefficient, but I found some comfort with a new weapon. Before leaving the Dreamscape, I went to the Elven Collector of Herbalism and Apothecary books to look up the sundrop flowers and sugarweed. The sugarweed petals needed to be dried in an oven. They were used as a sweetener, like Relia had said. They were also used to ease stomach cramps and help digestion when made into tea. I regretted not at least taking some of them. The sundrops were also interesting. They only bloomed in early spring and were actually eaten by animals of both sexes to increase fertility. Not particularly useful to me. Yes, enough of that. I finished my 4 hours in the Dreamscape and left. Maviot had cleaned up and was playing checkers with Relia. As I started putting things away, I told Maviot, "You have 8 hours to sleep before we climb the stairs." Maviot nodded and won the game. to Relia's consternation in the next few minutes. Maybe it took a few minutes to get comfortable, but was soon snoring softly on the stone shelf. Relia looked at me expectantly. I guessed it was time to have the tough conversation about her going back into my dimensional space. Ooh, I will love this. Chapter 167. Reconciliation. I was eyeing her, trying to figure out how to tell her I needed to put her back in my space, when Relia finally asked, "Do you want my legacy blade back? You know, to ensure I'd not stab you in the back." Her tone was conversational, and I was unsure if she was joking or serious, but I detected no malice in her words. What? It took me a second to remember she called her runic dagger a legacy blade. No, you can keep it. What is a legacy blade? She drew it and fingered the script. Oi, my family surname is Galavian. When my ancestors lived in Essenham, our family was part of the military class. Everyone in the family participated as either a soldier or an administrator in one of the corps. When the Essenham consul signed a peace treaty with the Telians, most of the Glavians migrated to the Barduradian Empire to continue fighting the Telian Empire. My grandfather passionately believed the Telian Empire needed to be stopped. She eyed me accusingly in my red Legion armor. My Legion armor was in a sorry state, and I looked more like a vagabond merc than a legionnaire. I had no response and doubted that agreeing with her would change her opinion of me. She sheathed her dagger. It is tradition for us to carry legacy blades into battle so that if we fall, our bodies can be identified. That does not make any sense. If there's only one blade, what about your siblings? Do you have any? Do they have legacy blades too? I asked, showing genuine interest. Relia let a small smile escape. Yes, I have an older and younger brother who are still living. My older brother is General Cleland Glavian. Are you right, Cleland Glavian? I remember him. I remember saying this name a few times. My younger brother has not yet chosen his path. The legacy blades go to the eldest on both the matriarchal and patriarchal sides. My mother gave me this legacy blade, which she carried with her into battle. Cleland has one given to him by our father. My youngest brother will carry a newly forged blade with our father's name when he begins his service. The parent's name is always on the blade, so they know who to return it to. I remembered the general had been searching frantically for Relia in Matcha. He had dismissed common military sense in his quest to find his sister, but the blitz had worked in his favor. I shifted on my stone seat as Maviath ripped a long fart in his sleep. Me! Taking it as a sign to go and sit next to Relia to escape the cloud. Oh. She did not tense as I sat next to her. I was not sure if I should ask the question, as it reminded her of the past, but I did. How did you become a griffin rider? She tensed, the tendon on her neck showing for a moment as she clenched her teeth before relaxing. I thought I had made a mistake, but she relaxed. I am small among my people. At first I wanted to be a ranger and a scout for the army. As I was training to be a ranger, I saw the griffin riders in action and became enamored with the idea of taking to the skies. What is flying like? Maybe its deep voice cut into our conversation. I had not even realized he was awake, and maybe his flatulence was intentional to get me to move closer to Relia. Sure. Relia genuinely smiled for the first time since I had known her. Her teeth were stained from the berries, but that did not detract from her youthful beauty. Her stern face relaxed, and two small dimples appeared on her cheeks. It is freedom, power, and ecstasy all rolled into one. Maybe it sat up, clearly interested in the topic. He asked eagerly, "How did you tame your griffin? Was it hard?" Relia laughed, realizing his intentions. Maybe I was allowed to become a rider because of my size. You are too large to mount the griffin. It would never get off the ground. Maybe don't listen to her. If you want to ride a griffin, I will help you find one big enough for you. Relia looked at me skeptically, and I could not hold back my laughter at the joke. She soon joined in, realizing I had not been serious. If there were a griffin large enough for you, I would be petrified of it, Relia said as the laughter died down. Maybe we raise the griffins from the egg. It is important to feed them and spend hours with them as they grow to maturity over the course of a year. It is another year after that before they can take a rider. You build loyalty with each other and they become your best friend. She trailed off, struggling to get the words out. I'm sorry about your griffin. Moonclaw, was it? I thought I sounded conciliatory, but Relia clenched her fist, her forearms flexing. Tears pooled in her blue-green eyes and rolled down her cheeks. It was my fault. I flew too low over the city. I put us in range of your mages. I did not say anything, and maybe it remained quiet. We let her cry for a bit before she spoke again. I realized I did it again when we fought the dire boars. I did not follow orders, and it risked getting Maeve killed. After a long pause, she added, "And you too." She hid a small smirk at withholding my name at first. I was beginning to understand that Relia did not just have a youthful appearance. She, in fact, truly was youthful. She was brash and reckless of mind as well. It felt like the right time to break the upsetting news. "Relia, we're headed back to the first floor. There are legionnaires up there who cannot see you with us." She tensed, her hand reflexively covering the handle of her runic dagger, but she relaxed slowly. "When the time comes, you should be holding both of your weapons." Both Relia and Maeve looked at me questioningly. I explained. "If I am killed, everything in my dimensional space will materialize. Whatever or whoever killed me will probably not be friendly." Saying it out loud was sobering. A heavy silence fell over us. "Is there anything I should be aware of in such a scenario? Will I be buried under purple potatoes? Or will 10 other women appear with me as well?" Relia said jokingly. "Give me a minute. Sometimes I forget what's in there myself," I said, pretending to focus straight ahead. "Let me see. 1 mostly dead ogre, a horse, and just 2 other elf maidens. Not 10, but you probably do not know them, as I made their acquaintance before I met you." Okay. A horse? Which horse? Mavid's eyes bugged a little, and Relia's jaw fell open, unable to speak. Did they really think I was telling the truth? Maybe it seemed the most perplexed. "Do you have Ginger in there?" Because I knew he was joking about the elf maidens, of course, but I was like, is there a horse? It could be. "Do you have Ginger in there?" Relia's eyes shot to Mavis and then to me, thinking Ginger was a person. Mavis thankfully explained, "Ginger is Eric's horse, not an elf maiden. He does not have Ginger in there." Although it was funny, I stopped speculation, sounding exasperated. "No, I was joking. I do not have an ogre, a horse, or a harem of elves. I have campaign equipment, all the food we've harvested, some weapons, and a few things I picked up here and there." I sighed as they now both looked skeptical. "Let's head up the stairs. Relia, stay behind us until I confirm no one from the company is in the Earth Drake chamber." We climbed the stairs, and Maviot walked straight in when he saw the dead drake. "You already killed it," he said excitedly. He walked around it, inspecting it and testing the scales hide. I motioned Relia forward, as there were no legionnaires here. Relia was also impressed. "That is the largest earth drake I've ever seen." She did not want to get too close and instead kicked the stone shards from the destroyed reward chest. She was probably wondering what had been in it, given the amount of stone. Maviot stood, grumbling to himself. I think he was about to educate me on what I should have done. The scales are useful for making shields. Claws and teeth can be made into useful tools, as they are much harder than normal bone. The flesh is too dense and would need a long cooking time to break down the tissue. I say we harvest the teeth and claws to sell. It's been just over half a day since I killed it, so I will give you an hour, I informed Maviot. Where is the other exit? Relly asked, looking up from the stone shards. You said there were 2 exits. I pointed at the green slime wall. She walked to it, perplexed. Maviot had his runic knife out, so I joined Relia. She reached out and touched the slime with her finger, then sniffed it. Is that safe? I asked, standing next to her. She looked at me. It is green slime mold. Goblins use it as food source because it grows quickly. Goblins. If it were dangerous, my finger would have burned. It is the only thing in here the Drake could have eaten. I did not tell her that was only my conclusion. I would let her think she was smarter than me. She had not found the hidden door yet, as it was 10 feet to her right. I drew my black blade and walked to the smoother part of the wall. I cut the slime like a curtain to reveal the dark passage beyond. I made to hand her a retrieved glowstone. She dismissed it with a wave. I do not need that. I can see just fine in dim light. She made the step into the corridor, and I grabbed her shoulder. Wait till Mavid finishes playing with the drake. Relia nodded but watched, fascinated, as the green slime once again hid the entrance. That is different. The slime mold grows so quickly, and not just on the surface. She took her own runic dagger to cut away the slime again and watch it reform over the passage entry. I walked to Mavieth, who had cut away the drake's lips to get easy access to the gums as he sought to pry the fangs out. Even with the runic knife, he was struggling. I think I can get the fangs in the allotted hour, Eric. If you want the claws, you'll need to help. It's all you, Mavieth. I thought about scouting the harbor room, but I might get spotted if the others were in there or watching it. Mavieth got 12 10-inch long fangs from the drake's mouth. He was grinning as he stuffed them into his bag. He was a mess of blood from his work, but was happy about his harvest. If I can find a master crafter, these will make exceptional cooking tools. I just nodded in affirmation. Relia was already cutting away the slime, eager to explore the dark passage. I handed Mavieth one of my 4 glowstones, and we entered. The slime slowly formed its curtain behind us, making this path feel more ominous than others. It was the first part of any dungeon I had entered that lacked a light source. However, there was that magical dark room near the shapeshifter room. We walked about 50 feet before Relia spoke. This could be a new dungeon room that the dungeon has not finished yet. Oh shit, it's still patching. Dungeons feed off the ley lines and grow like the roots of a plant over hundreds of years. Maybe it's questioned her assumption. Wouldn't that mean it grows downward? Not always, she clicked her tongue. I'm not knowledgeable about dungeons, but they grow in all directions around the ley line they feed off of. She stopped walking, and we all stopped with her. I hear running water, Relia said. We proceeded to walk, and the walls seemed different somehow. I could not place it as we walked further. The corridor opened to a rocky balcony overlooking a massive chasm. Water cascaded on the far side, but our glowstones were not strong enough to show us at the other side. Mavieth was the first to realize it. We are not in the dungeon any longer. What? There was no doubt surprise from me or Relia, as we felt it too. It was like we were no longer being watched and soaking in the dense dungeon ether. Where are we? I asked. What? Where are they? Feeling heat waves rising from the deep chasm, and I was starting to sweat. Mavieth said with awe in his voice. The endless dark. What the fuck is the endless dark? Where are they? What the fuck is that? How did they get out of the dungeon? Without going through a portal. What? I'm so confused. Okay. I said so. Chapter 168. The Green Goblin. Holy mother of God. The chasm before us made no sense in its immense scope. I had heard a legionnaire mention the Endless Dark before. The only thing I know about the Endless Dark is that it is where the goblin hordes come from. What is it doing inside a dungeon? Oh my god, it is? They glitched, yeah, because it wasn't finished. They got teleported because they're not allowed to be there. They're like, oh, nope. Relia, also in awe, stood dangerously close to the edge. She rasped softly. It is not inside a dungeon. The dungeon is inside of it. Dungeons are part of the Endless Dark, feeding off the ley lines deep in the earth. We're miles below the surface. What the fuck? Mavieth could not resist tossing a rock into the chasm. It bounced along the wall on its descent, creating echoing sounds even over the water cascading on the other side. Let's get back to the dungeon, I said, suddenly having a bad feeling. Yeah, I mean, I don't like the dungeon, but I'm way too scared of this. Flickers of lighting appeared deep within the chasm below, and I felt the temperature rising. We exchanged quick glances, and that was all we needed to spur us into running back to the safety of the dungeon. The safety of the dungeon. Do you understand how fucked that sounds? Shadows from our glowstones bounced around us as our feet scraped the stone. When we reached the end of the passage, there was no curtain of green slime lit by the glowstone. Instead, there was a solid, uneven rock. I fucking... Damn it. I pounded on the wall, and it echoed slightly. The dungeon was trying to seal us out. I tried to create a box to send the stone into my dimensional space, but the attempt rebounded, causing me to stumble. Disoriented, I bellowed, "Maybe use your hammer!" He understood and swung into the rock, breaking through a thin covering to create a small opening as the green slime tried to cover the hole. I pushed Relia through first and followed. I did not even mind getting covered in the green slime as I pressed through the hole. Maybe it crawled after us, and we all turned to watch the green slime cover the gap, breathing heavily. Oh my fucking god. Wiping and spitting the slime from my face, I was relieved to see the Drake was still dead. I had been worried it would have been revived by the dungeon. It seemed like this had all been a trick by the dungeon to kick us out, or probably just me. I speculated that it really did not like how I won our fights. Breathing heavily, maybe it asked, "What happened?" The dungeon tried to lock us out. I tried to create a door, but it was like when I tried to kill a creature without entering the room. My attempt backlashed on me, I said, still sweating from the heat of the chasm and the adrenaline surging through my veins. "Dungeons follow rules," Relia said, disgustedly cleaning the green slime from her hair. She had gone first and took the brunt of the slime. She whipped the glob off her hand. "No one knows why. One of those rules is that you need to enter a room to fight a creature. Once a fight begins, the creature can pursue anywhere in the dungeon." "What are the rest of the rules?" Mavid's deep voice intoned as we all calmed down. It did not appear there was anything pursuing us. "The ones I remember you already know. Safe rooms can't have dungeon creatures in them. Once you enter a room, a monster can pursue you out of it. There's a reward for clearing a room." Relia stopped cleaning herself and thought. She held up her hand and seemed to be counting, trying to remember. "Rooms will reset after 1 day, and if you rest in a corridor between rooms for more than a day, the creatures in any connected rooms can pursue you." Oi! She had not offered any new information. No, right. "Is that all you remember?" I pressed her. "Any new knowledge would be welcome." Relia nodded. "The dungeons I entered were not as dangerous as this one, and they were more for training us to work as a team against non-humanoids." Relia's head snapped in alarm to the far entrance, and I swore as I turned. I expected company men, but instead I saw a small green goblin sprinting frantically out of the corridor. I stumbled into a roll when it noticed the massive earth drake in the chamber's center. The goblin child was familiar. It was the one I had released to distract the bear. How had it survived for so long? Mavid's rumbling voice questioned, "Do you all see a goblin too?" Horrid screeches of feminine anger followed the goblin out of the corridor. "Harpies," I warned my group. "Harpies?" Relia questioned. "The goblin must have run through the last room. It had a pair of harpies in it," I explained while drawing my blade and rushing to the corridor to meet them. The frail goblin wasn't a concern. The harpy screams echoed down the corridor as they approached, and my head ached from the discordant cadence of their screams, which sounded like a mutilated song that I couldn't ignore. My mind clouded, and it was a strain to remain focused. Claws clicked rapidly on stone as they approached. I stood at the side of the passage opening and waited. Maybe it had pursued the goblin, and I could not yell at him for help, or I would alert the harpies. The first harpy stumbled into the room, and my blade came down on the back of its neck. I mistimed my swing, but managed to sever one of its leathery wings. It screeched in pain, sending a pressing migraine through my head. I pivoted to finish it with another swing when the second harpy plowed into me, talons first. I was pinned underneath the creature, struggling as I learned more about harpies than I have ever wanted to know in those next few seconds. Their legs were massive bird legs with talons, trying to tear my armor off. It also had long claws on its hands that tried to reach my exposed face. A grotesque woman's face with greasy black hair, wild eyes, and sharp teeth hissed and spat at me. I struggled to hold the heavy creature at bay. Its talons had a strong grip on me, and it was much heavier than it looked. Strangely, in my struggle, I remembered a curse my comrades used. Harpy's tits. And yes, the torso of this creature was well muscled and would have been attractive on any buxom human woman. Close your eyes, Relia yelled. I trusted her in that moment because I thought I knew what she was doing. Heat erupted around me as a wave of fire enveloped me for not more than a fraction of a second, blasting the creature away and freeing me. My armor protected me from the worst of it, but my face was blistered, and I smelled burnt hair. I rolled to my feet to see both harpies struggling, their wings in shambles, with embers still burning from the fireball. I slashed the one I had crippled with my black blade, ending its pained cries. The lone remaining harpy was hobbled, its wings shredded, and half its face burned. Its one good glossy black eye contained more malice than I could fathom. It tried to scream, but Relia's legacy dagger suddenly appeared in its throat, and it grasped at it as it struggled to breathe. I glanced at Relia, who stood 20 feet away. I nodded at her, my voice cracked from the dry heat. Nice throw. I stepped into the harpy's reach and stabbed it in the chest, aiming for its heart. I backed away before it could retaliate as it died. My face burned, and I reached for the ether potion but stopped. It was best not to waste the treasure and just deal with the pain. The only threat now was the goblin. I saw Maviot chasing the goblin around the corpse of the earth drake. The small goblin was bone-thin but incredibly fast. It definitely had a strong survival instinct. Relia stood beside me, looked concerned. I am sorry. It was the only thing I could think of to help you. You did the right thing, my voice creaked out. I thought I'd inhaled some of the fireball, as my lungs also burned along with my face. The harpy's claws would have ripped out my throat if she had not helped me. It was almost comical as we both watched the goblin avoid Maviot by using the large drake as cover. If Maviot got too close, it would scramble over the drake to the other side, the large scales making excellent handholds for its tiny nimble fingers. Neither Relia nor I moved to help Maviot. Why? Finally, I said, It's not a dungeon creature, Maviot. I brought it in here and released it when I fought my first bear. Maviot stopped his pursuit and looked at me, his chest heaving from his efforts. The goblin also looked exhausted but studied Relia and me. Even with my red and blistering face, recognition flashed in the goblin's eyes. That quickly turned to fear, and it bolted for the exit, descending the stairs to the safe room in a heartbeat. Let it go, I yelled to Maviot. In an odd way, I felt sorry for the creature, if it had survived over a week in the dungeon, running for its life. My guess was that it ran through a room and pulled the monsters into the next room to fight each other. I walked to Maviot and began healing my face as my ether recovered. Maviot was apologetic. Sorry, I did not help with the harpies. I got focused on the goblin. I looked at the part of the wall where the green slime covered the exit to the endless dark. The slime was no longer a flat surface, which indicated there was now rock behind it. Had we just passed up a chance to leave the dungeon? How would we have even scaled the chasm, and how far below the surface were we? No, we made the right choice, and whatever was at the bottom of the chasm was not friendly. Damn, so that was just like a little hint about the future, I guess, maybe. The harpies both yielded major charm essences. The essences had spiraling smoke inside in a mix of white and blue. If you looked at the pattern too long, it made you dizzy. I handed both to a surprised Relia. She had possibly saved my life and definitely played the largest role in the victory. She studied my face, which was now mostly healed. I am sorry you had to waste a healing potion on your face. I shrugged, not telling her I could heal myself. I looked to the Goliath. Maybe it's fine. Let's move back to the safe room. I looked seriously at Relia. You're going to have to return to my dimensional space. She did not appear as reluctant now. Maybe there was a little trust between us. We slowly descended the long set of stairs. Concerned the goblin could have drawn the direboars into the safe room. I thought they meant they go into the safe room because they just killed the harpies, so they're not in the harpy room. So I thought that they would go into the harpy room and then to the safe room with the legionnaires, and she would go into the space now. Why are they going back to have to kill the drake again? What's the point of this? Okay. There were no goblins or boars at the bottom of the stairs. Maybe it began to cook while I scouted the boar room to ensure there was no threat. I had recovered enough ether to kill a boar if needed. 2 boars were clearly visible as I approached the direboar chamber, blocking the entrance while a small goblin huddled, trying to make itself small in the corridor. My armor rasped loudly as I walked. The resin-infused leather plates having melted and deformed a little, little from the fireball, no longer sliding seamlessly against each other. The goblin spun back and forth between the two boars and me, trying to decide on the lesser of two dangers. At just over 12 feet away, I didn't give it a chance to make its final decision. I aligned some free space and sent the creature into my dimensional space. He took it back! I had recovered enough ether, and having something in my dimensional space that could serve as a distraction in a future fight seemed like a good idea. Holy. Let it go, maybe it. Yoink. What the fuck? I returned to the safe room. The goblin's taken care of, was all I said as I sat down. I have to read Relia, I told her, and she nodded in understanding. The meal consisted mostly of us speculating on why the dungeon was trying to get rid of us. Relia thought we had just caught it in the process of expanding its labyrinth and did not think the dungeon had enough awareness to target us specifically. She managed to convince Maviet of this, even though I was fairly certain the dungeon was targeting me. I think it recognized me as a threat and a nuisance. After storing the goblin, I had to draw out the meal to recover enough ether. Relia seemed to think it was due to my reluctance to store her, which worked in my favor, as I felt we had built a bit of trust, and I no longer saw her as an enemy. Relia finally stood. Let us get this over with. If I'm trapped inside you for a long time, know that I am not going to be happy when I am let out. Relia drew her two blades. Put your pack over there, I instructed, pointing to the shelf. You'll want to be unburdened when you come out. She nodded and did as instructed. She prepared herself and nodded. You can keep the ranger's cloak, I said, pushing her into my space before she could respond. Wow! Damn. Maybe it seemed sad as I went over to her pack. I took out the thermal stone first, since we had not used it to prepare the meal. Eric, what are you doing? Maybe it asked. Repacking her bag a little. I sorted everything out, and when I had enough ether, I pulled out food. Maybe it understood and started to help. When we left the dungeon, she was going to need food to get back to Barbaradian lands. Before repacking everything, I made a decision and pulled out a large egg. Maybe it was confused. The griffin egg! Oh, that is actually so cute! No fucking way. I had completely forgotten that we had that. That is so cute. Oh, Eric. Is that an egg? It is huge. What is it? I think maybe it was salivating at the culinary implications. This is a griffin egg, maybe. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Help me pack it so it's protected with all this food. During the process of packing Relia's backpack, I told Maybe the tale of how I acquired a griffin egg. When we finished, I sent the pack to my space, and Maybe it asked, Do you have any more eggs? Chicken eggs, preferably. I miss omelets. I laughed at the large man. No, that was the only egg I had in my space. I took a deep breath and held up a major essence with shifting colors. Can you watch over me as I take this? Oh, it's the illusion affinity from the shapeshifters. Maybe it nodded. I will watch over you. Maybe it is such a fucking bro. I love him. We had talked about this before, my unpleasant experience with the Apex Earth Essence. Hopefully, using one of the major essences instead of an Apex to unlock my illusion magic would not be as bad. It felt like it was the right time to experiment before reconnecting with the company. I wonder how much things he will have to keep, like if he will say anything to them. Or nothing. To the rest of the company. About his secrets like he has with Maniac. I doubt it, but then again, I don't know how long he can keep this shit up now. Oh. The essence dissolved in my mouth, and goosebumps ran across my body. My skin tingled as the electric heat left my stomach and spread across my body. This isn't so bad. I suddenly vomited, and my muscles clenched. I curled into a ball on the floor and let the process work its way to completion, trying to block out the pain. Well, I guess it wasn't that nice then. Chapter 169. Something Brewing. Through the pain, I kept trying to remind myself that it was not as bad as consuming the Apex Earth Essence and matcha. Maybe its voice echoed in the back of my mind as he tried to communicate, but the pain consumed all my focus. I bit my tongue, tasting the metallic, coppery blood that filled my mouth. As the pain finally ebbed away, my clenching muscles relaxed. I rasped out, How long? Maybe it was kneeling over me. Less than a minute. Are you okay, Eric? That looked unpleasant. There was no way it had been only a minute. I moved to a sitting position, every part of my body aching. Shit. What is it, Eric? You smell horrible, like rotten eggs. And your skin is slimy. David's voice, his concern, but still backed away. Yeah, I shit myself too. No. If I ever do this again, I'm going to make sure I purge both ends before I start. I spat out the residual vomit and tried not to move my ass too much. My throat was sore, and I used some healing on my damaged tendons and ligaments from clenching so hard. The foul clothing and filthy underclothes were definitely staying behind in this dungeon. I recalled the conversation with Calm. The Harpy room had some water. At least they said they were fishing there. We should be able to get past Earth Drake since it hasn't been a day yet. There should also be a reward chest to claim in the Harpy room. I will walk ahead of you, Maviot said, scrunching his nose. I was going to retort that I had put up with his body odor for a long time, but then again my own smells was making me nauseous and causing my eyes to water at the moment. We climbed the stairs, which was no fun in my soiled clothes. Oh my god, dude. Oh. The dead Earth Drake was still there, and we cautiously crossed into the next room. It curved slightly before arriving at the Harpy room. The Harpy room had a mix of short green trees and tall deadwood trees. I did not see any sign of the Legionnaires, and the stone reward chest was visible next to a large pool in the center of the room. Without my armor on, I had Maviot lead. You go first, Maviot. I have enough ether to manage one problem. He nodded, and we passed the short trees with red berries on them. Maviot ate one of the berries and immediately spat it out. This is bitter, Eric. Do not try it. I picked one of the berries anyway and inspected it. It looked like a small cherry, but it obviously was not. I squeezed the fruit, and a bean was inside the husk. The bean was white and looked oddly familiar. Maviot, I think this is a coffee bean. We have them in Singa. I was not completely sure, but from my reading, I knew there was a desert beverage that sounded like coffee. They roasted, crushed, and filtered water through the beans to create a rich black drink. It certainly sounded like coffee. I had not found coffee in the Italian Empire, but many tea varieties were available. We both walked to the pond in the center of the chamber and looked into it. It was about 20 feet across, and Colm had been right about there being fish in this room. This variety of fish was smaller than the eels or other fish I had already discovered. They were rotund and barely larger than my hand. They bobbed to the surface before diving deep into the depths of the pool and disappearing. I guess they needed air to breathe, which gave the harpies a chance to swoop down and grab them from their perches in the dead trees. I gratefully stripped, tossing my underclothes in a pile for the dungeon to reclaim. The water was cold when I tested it with my foot, and an oily sheen spread across the surface from my exposed leg. Whatever foulness my body had extruded was oily. The fish seemed to be repelled by my scent, suddenly stopping their trips to the surface. Yeah, they would rather suffocate than die. As I settled into the water, there did not appear to be any threat. Maviot, why don't you check the chest in the center of the chamber while I clean up? Surprisingly, the Goliath did not seem as excited about treasure as most people. He nodded, accepting the task reluctantly. I scrubbed myself as best I could in the water with a sock. With no detergent, it was difficult to clean off. Soon the entire surface of the pool was covered in an oily film from my efforts. I scrubbed my skin raw, trying to free myself of the foul stench. While I was bathing, Maviot returned with 12 silver coins and a potion, handing them to me. I studied the runic script on the potion before announcing. As best as I can translate, it says see in the dark. This is a potion of night vision. Maviot looked impressed. Keep it, Maviot. Dungeon potions should be good for years. I sent the coins to my dimensional space, so he would not have to carry them, and put the fishing kit on the shore for him. Maviot looked disgusted at the pond, which now had an oil slick coating it. Eric, I do not know if I want to fish this pond. I looked into the water, and it seemed some of the fish were having trouble swimming. Whatever impurities had been released from my body had fouled and poisoned the water. Can you harvest the berries for me? I think they have a use. Maviot looked at the 24 coffee trees and nodded. He seemed happy to have an excuse to get away. I continued my efforts to get as clean as possible before dressing in clean clothes. A few fish bobbed on the surface, clearly dead. Damn. I tried the collector on 3 of the small fish, and only one yielded a minor essence of constitution. I handed it to Maviot before putting my armor back on. My Legion armor was in bad shape. The red lacquer on the metal helmet was chipped. The leather pieces soaked in resin had warped slightly. The armor even had gouges from the harpy's talons. It looked like whoever wore this suit had been through a lot. The poor guy had been frozen, burned, crushed, and clawed. I had a new set of Legion armor in my space, but I could not wear it without revealing my expensive space to the company. I helped Maviot fill a large tarp with the coffee berries before tying the corners together and sending it to storage. I had no idea how to turn the berries into actual coffee, but one thing we had plenty of in the dungeon was time. There were 2 exits from this room. The one to the left led to Flavius and our legionnaire companions. The one to the right was probably where the goblin had come from. I had to make a choice. Reunite with Flavius and the others, or search for Castile. We still had hours before the harpies would respawn. I debated internally for a long time before announcing to Maviot. We're going that way. I pointed in the direction from which the goblin had most likely come. Maviot looked at the entrance that led to the legionnaires, then back at the one I had chosen. His confusion made me feel the need to explain myself. Flavius can't know that I have the collector, and the extent of my other abilities needs to remain a secret. Maviot understood. I will take your secret to my deathbed, Eric. Oh, his deep tone was reassuring, though I was a little worried. He said it too loudly, like he was making an oath, and I glanced at the corridor, relieved no one was standing there. After I had voiced my decision, we did not waste much time, leaving the harpy room behind. Wow. As we went, the corridor curved left and right, but the familiar flowing lights on the ceiling and floor were reassuring. I wondered where the goblin had come from, and why nothing had pursued it from the room we approached. When we reached the end of the corridor, it opened into a wide sandy room. Little dust devils of sand dotted the room. Maybe there was something underneath the sand. I gestured to Maviot on my right. Maviot was studying the sand as well. His deep voice speculated. There certainly are a lot of environments within this dungeon. I traveled through the scorching waste before. There were carnivorous beetles, scorpions of all sizes, and different varieties of elementals. Those sand swirls could be minor elementals. I studied the swirling clouds of sand more intently. They didn't seem to move, and I could recall no books that referenced elementals. If the goblin was able to pass through the room, should we try? Maybe it looked behind us, probably considering the 5 legionnaires and the scholar back there. He eventually turned back to the sandscape. If they're elementals, they should be affected by our runic weapons, maybe it said. I took that as a yes and stepped out onto the sand. The chamber was sweltering hot, like I was in a scorching desert, and the sand eddies started moving toward me. Maybe it stepped behind me. They're not elementals, Eric. Something is moving in the sand beneath them. Well, here we fucking go. What could it be, scorpions? Maybe it was right. The sand formed mounds moving toward us. It was easy to get distracted by the mini tornadoes. They moved at a decent speed, spread out and coordinated. Back out of the room area. We both exited to the corridor safely, ready to retreat to the harpy room. All 5 mounds converged on us and stopped at the entrance. A dog-sized beetle. Everything is dog-sized. Dude, that's so vague. Everything is dog-sized. What dog? I just assume that it's an Aussie because because Oscar is an Aussie. So I'm just assuming that everything is an Aussie size. But Aussies are small. They're smaller than like a golden or Labrador. You know? I know, it's such an ass description. Is it a Chihuahua or is it a fucking Great Dane? Like, what is it? Both of those are dogs. If it's a tiny little Pomeranian, it was like, oh, well, then just kick it and it dies. But if it's a fucking... if it's a big ass, like, boxer, then it's like, well, you know, who... what dog? A dog-sized beetle emerged from the sand, its impressive mandibles snapping in the air in frustration, but I would just assume that it's a medium-sized dog. It appeared uncertain about leaving the sand before submerging itself again. We both stood ready, but the beetle slowly moved away. Maybe its baritone sounded. I think they are sand scarabs. I have never seen them before, but sand scarabs use ether and earth magic to burrow in the sand. If you try to fight them, they can quickly sink you in the sand to attack you below the surface while you are immobilized. That sounds utterly horrific. Getting trapped in the sand, unable to put up resistance while they use those mandibles in your legs and other parts. I shivered, understanding why Flavius and the others had not tried this room. They're also fast, so it would be difficult to avoid them, Maviot noted. We do not need to avoid them, Maviot. They will not leave the protection of the sand. I stepped into the room and waited for the first scarab to reach me before pulling a deep column of sand under the vortex into my space. My ether bottomed out, and the beetle had resisted strongly, but I still succeeded. I stepped back into the corridor with Maviot. We were both ready as the other 4 scarabs hovered outside the corridor, but they were still unwilling to leave the sand's protection. I smiled at Maviot. Now we just have to wait until I can do that again. It usually takes me about 2 hours, but it has been less than an hour in the dungeon. I guess it was not just the dungeon, but also the gains in my ether channeling attribute that was speeding my recovery. About 40 minutes later, a second scarab was killed. They traveled about a foot under the sand, but the swirling sand above them made it easy to track their movements. After killing a third one, the last 2 surprised us by leaving the safety of the sandy room. Oh, they said, fuck this. Maviot wasn't caught off guard. He crushed one with his hammer, and I was able to pierce the other between the mandibles with my black blade. This was good, as I could use the collector on the last 2, getting a major earth essence from both. I tried the collector on the other 3 scarabs, getting 1 additional major earth essence and 1 minor earth essence. The first scarab had been dead for too long to yield anything. We knew the room was clear when the stone reward chest appeared in the center of the micro-desert. Easy peasy, Maviot. I smiled at the Goliath, who gave me a doubtful look as he tried to figure out what peasy meant. Yeah, what does peasy mean? I approached the modest chest and shattered it. Silver coins spilled out, and a leather-bound tome lay on top. Ooh. It smelled strongly of seasoned leather as I opened it. Inside were pages of layered spell forms for some type of spell. I could not understand what the spell actually did within the Latin script explaining it. After the first few pages of spell form, the runic script on the following pages probably went into detail about the spell, but it would take me hours to puzzle out the translation in the dreamscape. I noted a few symbols that seemed to indicate it was related to the Earth Affinity. I held the book out to Maviot. I think it might be an Earth Affinity spell. Do you want it? No, I already inscribed my Earth Affinity, Eric, and I cannot learn actual spells. I shrugged and gathered up the silver coins along with the book. We looked around the room, seeing only sand filling the oval space. Let's move to the corridor, Maviot. This room wasn't very difficult for us, and I would not mind returning to get more Earth Essence later. We walked into the unexplored corridor, and it was not long before we arrived at a familiar-looking room with 2 long, wide stone shelves. Maviot grunted happily. A rest room. It was a safe room, unique in that there were 3 different exits, not including the corridor we were standing in, or on the oily black door tempting us to exit the dungeon for good. We moved in and started to unpack, but I immediately noticed dark letters in Latin next to the faded elven script on the wall. Castile's group went this way. Why didn't he do that? But then maybe he didn't want to say. With an arrow pointing to one of the corridors. We were close, but how long ago had that been written? I turned to Maviot, who could not read Latin. Castile's group was here. His eyes went wide with excitement. He was clearly ready to get out of the dungeon. Don't get too excited. We don't know how long ago they passed through here. Why don't you get some sleep first? I'll stay up and prepare some food. Or maybe it's the summoner saying that Castile's group went that way, but it's actually the summoner because Castile never went into the dungeon and Castile was killed. Just a thought. I don't think so. I pulled out the elven tablet table and some ingredients, including a handful of coffee berries. Mavieth made himself comfortable and was soon snoring. With Mavieth asleep, I grasped the edge of the table and activated the device. It was time to see what the major illusion essence had done for me. Right. Chapter 170. Staying grounded. I was looking forward to seeing my progress. I felt healthy and fully recovered after a week of full meals, and the ring of sustenance had slowly increased its effectiveness. I had not been training in my spare time, but I still felt like most of my strength and clarity of thought had returned. I was not expecting too many gains, as the period since my last reading was minimal. I was mostly focused on my illusion affinity. How much had it increased from just a single major essence? I revived Review Reviewed the left side of the tablet first, moving my food prep items out of the way to read the results. Okay. We have more strength, one more power, more quickness, endurance, constitution. Yeah, all the physicals are up. All the mentals are also up, specifically reasoning. And magic +6 channeling and +1 max channeling. Other tolerance 3 and 1 max. Good. My physical attributes had normalized to their relative levels before we were chased into the elven ruins and nearly starved inside the library. My mental attributes showed modest gains from a few essences. The magic attributes showed the most impressive gains, with channeling increasing by 6 points and other tolerance by 3. I assumed this was due to the ley line being so close to the dungeon and the faster rate at which I could recover my other. With my channeling increased, it meant I would see gains outside the dungeon as well, if I ever got outside of the dungeon. 2 glaring weaknesses stood out: my other pool and my ability to shape ether. So far in the dungeon, I had not discovered any essences for either magic attribute. There wasn't much I could do about my poor luck, but I had enough essences to last me weeks. I moved everything to the other side of the table to read my magical affinities. The only change was with my illusion affinity. Well, then we don't have to fucking read this, do we? Base is high and everything, worlds, yeah, everything is the same then, as he said. But we have an illusion of 3. Woo! I had unlocked 3 points in the illusion affinity, raising it from 0 to 3 with a single major essence. It was not even remotely enough to gain a new spell form, and it was half as effective as the Apex Earth essence had been in awakening the affinity. Still, the awakening of the illusion affinity had been just as painful and unpleasant. I still smelled like dried vomit, even though I had left the soiled clothes behind. Sighing, I started to work on dinner, shaving bear meat with Mavid's new skinning knife. I could only take 1 essence a day without risking being overwhelmed. I had told Mavid and Aurelia to do the same, but Castile had told me during my first dungeon delve that you only needed to wait an hour between consuming similar essences, though each successive one would be unpleasant as the body needed time to recover. Could I raise one of my magic affinities high enough to imprint a new spell form? If yes, should I pursue illusion or earth essence? I had 2 apex and 1 major essence of illusion remaining. For earth essences, I had 2 apex, 6 major, and 1 minor essence. There was also the possibility of getting more earth essences from the sand scarabs. I had books in my dimensional space with spell forms for both affinities. The meat started sizzling. I cooked it in small batches and sampled each one. The cooking was more for Mavid, since I had the ring of sustenance. Mavid rolled over at the smell, facing me. Sleepily, he asked, "Did it work?" "Did what work?" I asked, feigning my ignorance. "You took out the tablet table, Eric. I know you do not want me to see your readings, but it is obvious you wanted to see if the suffering you went through was worth it." I had to remember that Mavid was not dumb, and that I was being very transparent. I admitted calmly. "Yes, I awakened my illusion affinity. Do you want to try to awaken one of your affinities?" Mavid sat up, his nose wrinkling at my lingering scent. "No," his voice echoed into the room. "I am happy with improving my physical prowess. How long was I asleep?" "More than 2 hours, less than 3. I did not have Mavid's uncanny ability to know how much time has passed. "After you eat, you can go back to sleep. The ring has reduced my sleep to just 2 or 3 hours now, although I do want to use the amulet at some point." I started frying slices of purple potatoes in the remaining bear fat, while Mavid quickly devoured 5 pounds of shaved bear meat. He had lost a lot of weight, but was putting it back on quickly. It was awe-inspiring how much food he was able to consume. I drank water and popped a few slices of purple potato into my mouth. Even if I burned my mouth, I could heal the blisters easily enough. I was starting to use magic without even thinking about it. Finally satiated after eating 4 large potatoes, after the bear meat, Mavid asked, "Are we going to pursue Castile?" "Yes, but first I want to harvest the sand scarabs one more time," I admitted. "I want to try and increase my earth affinity high enough to imprint a spell form for earth on my other core." Maybe its eyes danced excitedly. That would be amazing, Eric. I would suggest my earth spell form, Shape Stone. It has been extremely valuable to me and would give us something in common. Oh, his green eyes sparkled eagerly. He will not, maybe. I will see when the time comes, maybe. I still need to raise my earth affinity high enough to imprint a spell form. Maybe it ate some appleberry jam before going back to sleep. I mean, it's good, but I feel like Eric will find something more suited for him. I turned my attention to the coffee cherries. I was not a coffee addict, but I enjoyed a morning cup on the way to work a lifetime ago. I wonder what he worked with. I husked all the berries, giving me a handful of white, slimy beans. I took a moment to enter my dreamscape amulet and find the passage for kava, the desert drink made from beans. Kava? Unfortunately, there were no recipes to follow, so I was winging it. I tried heating them in a pan. They smoked fiercely, but eventually browned. I ground the beans up and added boiling water once they were dried. I let the sediment settle and tried a sip. I spit out the bitter, grassy-tasting beverage. My heart thudded in my chest, and I felt the turmoil in my other core. Thankfully, I hadn't swallowed the brew. These coffee beans contained raw ether. They were an alchemy ingredient, not a wake-me-up beverage. Maybe it was still sleeping, and I did not disturb him while I cleaned up. I removed my armor and went through my sword forms. I was only mildly rusty. Even with consuming essences, I needed to start getting into the mindset of training, both in the dreamscape and outside of it. When Maviot stirred again, he rose to do his business in the corridor, and I set myself up for a nap with the amulet. As he returned, I channeled Ether into the amulet. First, I confirmed in my Dreamscape library that I had the book for Earth spell forms. It was there, but I would wait to study it until my affinity reached a sufficient level. I opened the Scorpion room and spent 3 hours practicing with Constantine, Xavier, and Maviet. It felt good to focus on fighting people instead of monsters. I also missed Constantine's repeated encouragement. Serana wanted to fight with me as well, but I declined her request and let her play with Oscar, who was begging for attention as well. I sealed everyone in the Scorpion room again, as we were getting close to finding Castile. I guessed she would want to use the amulet. On an impulse, I created a likeness of Relia. She immediately rolled away, drawing her weapons and started swearing. "Where am I? Who are these people?" She pointed at me. "Legionnaire, what treacherous space have you sent me to now?" She pointed her legacy blade threateningly at me. I had expected Relia to react this way. Her form and personality were drawn from my subconscious. Maybe it moved to calm down the agitated elf. With a smirk, I informed her. "Welcome to the Dreamscape, Relia. We can talk another time." "What is a dreamscape?" she started to say, but I was already exiting. I sat up and was disappointed that the sour, acidic bile smell still lingered on my body. Maybe I could use the mouthwash as a body wash to eliminate the smell. No, it was best to save the mouthwash. Maybe it was rolling his essences in his hand, probably trying to decide which one to consume. "You can take another one, maybe. Everyone is different in how long they have to wait between essences. If your stomach gets upset, you'll know you're in interval between consumptions." But I told Maybe it was a truth from my perspective. He took another quickness essence and put it in his mouth, savoring the effect. "Has it been a day since we killed the scarabs?" I asked Maybe. "No, Eric. There are still about 4 hours before a day has passed." Maybe it grumbled. We walked back to the sand room and waited in the corridor. Maybe it snacked while I studied the dead scarabs, waiting for the dungeon to absorb them. They disappeared in a blink, and 2 small swirling sand funnels formed, followed by a third, a fourth, and a fifth. Maybe it's time. I stood and cracked my knuckles. It went the same way as last time. I killed 2 scarabs in the sand, but did so closer to the corridor. I removed the collector before the fight began, allowing me to use it on the sand scarabs between kills. When we finished, I took 2 major earth essences and 3 minor earth essences. The reward chest only held some large silver coins and non-runic ornate jewelry with some impressive emeralds. I now had a sizable collection of earth essences. Back in the safe room, I slowly placed one of the major earth essences in my mouth. Flashes of phantom pain made me hesitant to consume my second earth essence. This was another test. If I had truly unlocked the earth affinity, I shouldn't have to go through that pain again. The grainy earth essence dissolved in my mouth, and I was hard. I mean, they do say that essences that is that he can have a euphoric feeling. But then the grainy earth essence dissolved in my mouth and was hard to swallow. My stomach suddenly cramped. Shit, I said, and Maviant moved to steady me. I held my hand to hold him back. No, I'm fine. Just an upset stomach. It's working normally. It took a few minutes before I felt the essence assimilate completely. The brief pain was perhaps because I had not waited long enough between essences, or maybe this was a sign that I was not fully healed from opening my illusion affinity. I needed to be mindful over the next few weeks. I used my healing spell form to try to detect any damage in my mana channels, but sensed nothing wrong. Though perhaps my healing spell form could not detect issues with mana channels. I took out the tablet table, and maybe it turned his back, making me feel guilty for not trusting him. I used the table, reset it, and returned it to my space. Okay, Maviant, let's go find Castile. As we walked into the unknown corridor, I smirked. My earth affinity had increased from 6 to 8. Hell yeah! 2 more points! Wow. What a few chapters that was. That was pretty crazy. The summoner is in the dungeon. We found legionnaires. We found out that some legionnaires are dead. Relia is back in our space. The summoner is in the dungeon, apparently. And now Mavius and Eric said, fuck you to the legionnaires, and are gonna find Castile instead. What? And now we will also take our Christmas break and we'll be gone for the rest of the year and come back in January. So I hope that I will see all of you next time.